In yoga, we liken breath to prana. And prana is this concept that we use in yoga, basically means life force. And I was trying to explain it to my 5-year-old, who some of you might have seen on his way out, my little redheaded child, and he was asking me what mommy does. He was talking about prana. And prana, I was explaining to him, is all of the energy in the world and all of the magic that can take a tiny little acorn and turn it into a gigantic oak tree. And my son is 5, and every time I do laundry, I wonder how there's any oak trees left in the entire world, because he goes around and picks up all the acorns. So he's fascinated by this. So for about 4 seconds, he thought I was cool. But this tiny little acorn, this little seed, has inherent in it all of this amazing, powerful energy. And I like to remind people that we're all built from 2 single cells, who very often met by accident in the dark. And this amazing system evolves around that. Right? And that energy of creation is a consistent throughout your entire life. Every single 7 years, every single cell in your body has died off and been reproduced. Every 7 years, you have completely different cellular structure than you did before. That's amazing. So much of you dies off and is replaced every day. And there's this amazing thing that happens between our minds and our body. And that's what I feel like we miss a huge amount in our culture. And that our mind and our body, they're not so separate. They very much inform and interact. There's a woman I'm a huge fan of. Her name's Candace Pert, and she did some amazing, amazing, amazing research. And she discovered the receptor, basically the receptor for morphine. Right? And basically what she discovered is that every single emotion in our body has a chemical that mimics that. Right? Every time you have an emotional response, your body releases chemicals. And these chemicals are called peptides, and they interact on your cells, all of your cells. The really interesting thing is that we very much train ourselves to get into an emotional response. Because every time we have an emotion, we flood our body with these cells. So, for instance, I have a friend who's a very close friend of mine who I love very dearly, who's very much anchored to his diagnosis of clinical depression. And when I explained to him that maybe we could try this or maybe we could try that, he explains back to me that no, that couldn't possibly work because he has clinical depression and his doctor says that that means he will never get better. And what it means to me is he doesn't have to try. And that pisses me off, and then we get in an argument. We don't talk about this very much anymore. But he's a very good friend of mine he has taken small steps and he's starting to feel better. But for years and years and years, he just told me why he couldn't get better. The interesting thing is, when you put out the emotion of, I feel wicked crappy, you flood your body with the chemicals that are associated with the I feel wicked crappy. Now, because your body is constantly dying and reproducing, when it reproduces new cells, those cells will have more receptor sites for the chemicals associated with I feel crappy, and less receptor sites for the chemicals associated with I feel great, and B12, and avenues for detoxification. Right? So we can very much teach ourselves to feel crappy. The body's amazing. Even parts of the body that we think of as exceptionally durable and hard and unchanging, right, like the skeletal system, have a huge amount of plasticity to them. Okay? I don't remember the statistic, but there is a measurable bone loss without gravity in something like 20 minutes. Not measurable to the human eye, but with their fancy instruments, they can measure bone loss, and they test it on astronauts, right? The people who spend lots of time in no gravity. Right? There's measurable bone loss for something like 20 minutes. It's very, very, very quick. Now, if we supply gravity back into that situation, bone loss will just increase. Bone mass will increase. Right? When we start changing the way we stand on our bodies, we will change the way that bone mass is distributed along our bodies. If you start paying attention and shifting your weight and shifting your attention, your body will shift and flow. Okay? It's always changing. It's very, very obvious to me now, right? My body changes on a daily basis. And I'm very squishy, so literally if I sleep funny at night, I wake up and have to like walk sideways for a while until my SI joint readjusts, okay? And it's interesting, people always tell me like, oh, I can't do yoga, I don't have any flexibility, I want flexibility, I need flexibility. People want to be able to put their foot behind their head, which is such an interesting way of looking at it in the context of yoga, because so many people come for flexibility. And they tell me all the time how much they want it. And I've actually had people try and hurt themselves in the effort to get more flexible. So tonight I really start to invite us to look at the body in an individual way. Because everybody's body is different. But everybody's body is in a constant state of flux and changes. Okay? And it can change at any point. And it does. When we shift our attention to look at the positive, we tend to attract a whole lot more of that. So we want to start doing that, right? Because we can definitely say like, I just feel so crappy. Or we can start to say like, okay, well, what can I do to feel a little bit better? Yoga's gonna make you feel better. Inherently in it, there's a lot of breathing. Oxygen makes you feel better. So you will get the physical benefits of that. The way we have matched people up in this particular program, some of you are working with one particular therapist and a bunch of you are going to see one main therapist and then one or two others for a little bit of extra stuff, because we have people who do Reiki and people who do massage and the Meridian Yoga. So you want to be able to focus on your whole person, right? What we're asking people to do in a program like this is to connect deep inside. For a lot of people, that's not easy. For a lot of people, deep inside is a really nasty, scary place because we've grown up in this culture. And as we already went over, it's sometimes not a kind place, right? Even if you do look like the cover of the magazine. Paris Hilton does not seem like to have that nice of a life. Just doesn't seem like to be that much of have a lot of that substance, right? Energetically, we start to look at that of, do we bring to us all of the things that happen to us? Maybe we do. Maybe we need to learn from them. Maybe we need to get stronger from them. Maybe our struggles are what makes us who we are. If not, we'd be Paris Hilton. Might have a nice car and some cash to throw around, but really, right? The amazing, fabulous people that we are very much comes from our struggles. That's where we get our strength from. You don't become a good person easy. It takes work. Starting to look at some of our conditions and our injuries in more of a compassionate, listening way. Because one of the main things that we really try and focus on at first, it's very, very easy to be very angry for all the things that have happened to us, right? And the conditions under which we live. Because a lot of them are not very fun. And that makes sense. Right? As we start to look at the emotion and the injury and the condition, sometimes it's chicken or egg, and egg or chicken, and we never really know. For instance, I had a client who was in his 70s who had had a couple different heart surgeries. He had been a traveling salesman for a long time and a very successful one at that. And he's in his 70s, so he drove a huge amount across country for a long time. Right? And he very much has a kyphotic spine. He's like this. Now, when you're here, what happens to your heart? It's all scrunched up. There's no room for it. Right? So we start to wonder, did his posture cause his heart condition? Maybe his heart condition causes posture? Starting to look at that. Opening, in traditional yoga, one of the first things they do for heart patients is to open up the chest. My primary care physician is a cardiologist, and I asked him about that. He said, oh, I never even thought about that.